I'm pretty proud of my oldest son. He uh he is the manager at a Sonic. That's actually where I got this super cool camo Sonic hat. Stole it from him. But he calls his mom the other day and was just venting about how hard it is to find good workers. And he's like, this next generation, rah. He's only in his 20s. This next generation, rah, 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 rah. And, it warms my heart because you never feel like as a parent that you're doing things right. It's always like, or at least me, I never felt like I was doing things right. My son, for the most part, he wasn't, he was just kind of a gamer kid, he never like had any chores or like we never forced him to do anything, and he kind of was just able to do whatever he wanted. I was worried, honestly. I was like, he is going to have no work ethic and it's going to be hard, and his first job he got was at Sonic, and right next door to the Sonic is an Italian restaurant. He worked there for a little, and he bounced back and forth between the two jobs, maybe, 2 or 3 times. And I was like, hey, I kind of just saw, I'm like, this is the non-work ethic. But he was living with us at the time, so he was able to make those moves. And then he eventually went and worked at a McDonald's, and he worked there for a long time. And he was living here, and then he up and quit there because he didn't really have any responsibility. Now, for the last, this is like during, during high school, and then a little bit after high school. But then him and his girlfriend, they got their own place. They live, about half hour from us, 45 minutes from us, down in the city now. And they have a nice little apartment, brand new apartment. Pool and full gym, and, it's just them two. And I couldn't be more proud of him. He is definitely in a way better spot in life than I was at 20 years old, that's for sure. And his girlfriend, she's awesome. Last night I was I was on Twitter having a conversation with a lady. She had made a comment about living in California and how her son doesn't want to date because there's just a bunch of purpled hair, knuckleheads. And I was like, move him to Texas. I was like, my son found a really sweet, raised Christian girlfriend. She's awesome. They dated all through high school, high school sweethearts. They dated pretty much all through high school. They had a couple of splits here and there, as most teenagers do. But for the most part, they've been together, pretty much all through high school. And now they're in their 20s. And, she was working at a daycare place for a little while and then got a job as a sub, which I didn't realize you could become a substitute teacher without like having any formal schooling or anything. So, but yeah, she's like a substitute teacher, and she does social media stuff. She's making pretty good money on social media doing, just like makeup tutorial type content and stuff, working with different companies, marketing different products, which is cool. It's honest work, and she's not out there, taking half naked pictures and stuff like that. So that's good, and, I'm proud of them. I'm happy for them. And it just made me laugh, thinking that, that he was going to have no work ethic and stuff. And all those years of me riding him and stuff finally paid off, because apparently he does have a strong work ethic. He works his butt off. He puts in the hours. He lived, 15 minutes from the store that he's at. And then they got that house down the hill. So now he's driving, half hour, 45 minutes up the hill to come to work every day. And he opens, so he's up early and makes it to the store. And apparently it's hard for him to find good work. So, yeah, sometimes you think you're too hard on them, or you know, he couldn't move out of the house fast enough, you know, because I was just a tyrant. I was always riding him about this, that, or the other, and of course, mom and Nana, you know, spoiled him rotten. You know, we lived with my mom for most of his, you know, youth. You know, I think we didn't, you know, he was like 13 when we finally got moved out on our own. So my mom, of course, spoiled him rotten. My wife, you know, waited on him hand and foot. So I thought he was, I thought he was screwed. I'll be honest with you. But turns out, you know, being hard on him, you know, riding him and, you know, forcing him to do things he didn't want to do, and it sunk in. You know, my you know, my work ethic, I think, came from my dad. You know, my dad always he worked graveyard most of my youth, and I think maybe it's just, you know, you see your parents. You know, when my oldest son was younger, I was working construction for, you know, the first couple of years. Actually, no. Now that I think about it, I was already fabricating. I was already building cars. So, I mean, regular, you know, start work at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and get home 5 or 6, you know, is pretty much my schedule. So, I don't know. I think kids, if, you know, kids see it, you know, I mean, obviously having chores and having responsibility plays a huge role in, you know, shaping their character and their work ethic and stuff. Yeah, I'm really proud of him. It's pretty awesome. It's I'm glad to see, you know, he needs to get a little more motivated. You know, he wanted to get into the trades, and I was like, I don't know if you, I don't know if you're gonna be able to survive the trades. You know, it's a whole different world. He's kind of thin-skinned, and just he's not real coordinated. You know, he wasn't like a natural athlete or anything. You know, I got into trades, but as a kid, I was always building things. You know, I know how to use a hammer and a screwdriver and a drill by the time, you know, I was 12 years old, 10 years old. You know, it was all stuff that I had did or found fascinating, you know, growing up. So getting into trades made sense. You know, I always wanted to make things with my hands. And he kept saying, you know, initially he actually wanted to get into like internet marketing. And I was like, that's tough, dude. I'm like, waste a bunch of money going to school for that, get a bunch of debt. And now look what's going on with AI. You know, those kind of jobs are going to be gone. But AI isn't going to be able to replace electricians and plumbers and HVAC, you know, framers and roofers. AI is not going to be able to replace all those people. So I told him, well, to get into a trade. You know, he initially wanted to become a mechanic, and I was like, I don't know if you want to do that for a living. You know, he wanted to go to a school to become a mechanic. I was like, just find a shop that's willing to teach you, you know, instead of accumulating a bunch of debt. So I don't necessarily know what his plan is for the future here. You know, he keeps tossing around the idea of going into HVAC. So hopefully he pursues that. You know, it's a good living. Those guys make good money, especially here in Texas. It's hot during the summers and cold during the winters. So those guys stay busy. Or I told him looking to become an electrician. Electricians are kind of the prima donnas on the job site. So they got it pretty good. They make good money. You know, it's a good, honest living. So hopefully he finds a trade, you know, even if it's just not something permanent, you know. It's good to learn a skill. I'm as kind of bitter as I am about where my career led to at this point. I am happy that I have all these skills, you know, fabricating, welding, and, you know, I'm kind of a jack of all trades kind of guy, master of none. But, you know, I could fix things around the house and work on my own cars, and it's definitely good to, you know, learn and have that skill set. But I don't know, we'll see where he goes. Definitely fast food's not a lifelong career. It shouldn't be a lifelong career. It's definitely something for the youth. You know, at his age, you know, it's pretty common to be in a fast food position. So we'll see what he does. But yeah, and leave it there.